Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Before we get started, let me tell you about the only supplements that I use. For nearly 10 years, Bare Performance Nutrition has been on a mission to educate, inspire, and improve the performance of modern-day athletes, adventurers, and warriors through training, nutrition, and supplementation. With effective formulas that work as hard as you do and are third-party tested for prohibited substances, you can get results and reach your full potential with Bare Performance Nutrition. Head to the link in the show notes to go to the website to help me out and to help you out so that we can go one more together. Now, let's get to the episode. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast, episode 80. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very, very, very special guest in the great state of New Jersey, Dan Marchese. Dan, how are you?
Good. How you doing, man? I really appreciate you having me on this podcast today, man.
Of course. I'm doing great. This is long overdue. We've connected a couple times through social media, once on the phone, and you've been doing some really cool stuff. And I have a lot of questions for you. But before we get to any of that, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience however you see fit?
Cool. Yeah. So like Joe said, I'm Dan Marchese. I'm from Monroe Township, New Jersey, still currently located in Monroe Township, New Jersey. And I'm a fitness professional over at Motives Movement in Millstone, New Jersey, not too far from where I am right now. And I've been been a fitness professional or personal trainer for the last decade. So it's really been what's evolving in my life professionally, and also my passion just to help people and live better lives overall. And I'm also a big advocate on running now, long distance running. And you'd call me an ultra runner because I run over the marathon distance. And I like to, of course, get strong by staying in the gym and lifting weights as well. So basically, like my life revolves around fitness and just sharpening the mind.
I'm so curious to hear how you got into fitness in the first place, because for me, it was a way to look good and feel good when I was a teenager. And I think if people are being honest, that's the reason most people get into fitness, is to look good. What was it for you, and when did that happen?
So I've always been athletic. I've been involved in sports, soccer, basketball, baseball. And then as I got older, I started wrestling. And I really believe, sorry, I have all these animals around me. I really believe wrestling is what got me more into the weight room. And I also agree with you that as I got older, I started noticing like my friends I was a short, skinny kid, like it wasn't even triple digits weight wise and poundage in high school. When I entered high school, I was very small. So once my friends just started naturally growing and just bulking up naturally, and I noticed that like more females were attracted to that sort, I was like, all right, well, it's going to help me improve in performance in my sport and I'll look better. So it was like the mix of both to get started. But then I really started seeing the results early and seeing how it helped in my performance, especially in wrestling. So from there, I just took it off. And then after I was done with sports, I got more involved in things like powerlifting and weightlifting and really just like hit the ground running once I stepped into the gym.
Yeah, you hit the ground running, and you're still running today. And we'll get to that, but I am curious at what life lessons have you learned from wrestling?
Wrestling, I mean, I think it's one of the world's greatest sports. It's funny because like wrestling in the moment, I didn't absorb too much. I was just like an ignorant kid. Really, if we had a quadrant, table of 4 quadrants, and it was like family, school, social, and fitness and wellness, I only had 5 ticks to fill those quadrants, I'd probably say in high school, 3 of those 5 takes were on my social, and then like one in family, one half in school and half in wellness, you know? So I was very like about what everyone else was doing and trying to like stay in the cliques, and wasn't too focused on that. But now later on that I'm pushing myself and I'm testing my body, I've learned that wrestling dug deep into like knowing what it's like to tap into that and knowing what it's like to do it over and over and over again. And it can be grueling, and you constantly like have that battle with that inner voice in your head that's always giving you the easy way out. So life lessons I've learned from it came later on in life, not directly from it, but it was definitely discipline and just learning how to go through pain, and going through that pain when you earn a victory from it. It's like, oh, wow, it's all worth it, you know, to get your hand raised in wrestling match, like all those hours in the room, sweating, bleeding, crying, it was all worth it. And now I really see it.
I think most people learn lessons after the fact. I think it's really hard to absorb the whole lesson while you're in something, especially when it's uncomfortable. And so that's why I think that reflection, whether it's through talking or through journaling or some other medium, is really important to fully be able to extract growth and learning out of an experience. And I also wrestled. I only wrestled for about 2 years in middle school. And it was one of those sports where I saw it and I thought, I could dominate. Like I can manhandle somebody, essentially is what I thought. And then my first match, I'll never forget, probably ranks in the top 2 or 3 most embarrassing things in my entire life. I got out there on the mat. This other kid, same weight class. He looked strong, but I felt strong. I've been lifting weights for 5 years at that point. And it starts and I'm on my back before I know it. And I'm squirming for the whole thing, and eventually I get pinned, and it was so humbling. And I realized that wrestling is not only a sport that requires strength, but it's a sport that requires immense amount of skill. And I have a great appreciation for it.
Yeah, I agree. Same. I still watch today. Last week I was at Rutgers. Rutgers has a pretty good team, so and they have a lot of big D1 schools. Like last week it was Michigan State and Michigan. So it's cool to go out there and watch some high level wrestling.
Yeah. So, all right, if we were to come back to present day, then, so you've been a fitness professional for a decade. You've wrestled, you've power lifted, you run currently. Tell us a little bit about what fitness looks like for you these days, and then we'll dive deeper.
So now my priority really is around the ultra marathon running. I really found a passion for this crazy thing. And I think, again, going back to wrestling, it's the individualism in the sport. Just like it's against you. It doesn't really matter where you place. It's more about like you crossing that finish line because you said you were going to do it. And I just love how it's that aspect. So running is my priority. So when it comes to training, if I'm training for a race, I'm definitely building up a lot of mileage. Some days maybe running twice a day, and also getting a lift in. If I were to go through like in a race prep daily routine, it would be like running 5 to 6 days a week, lifting 4 to 5 days a week. The running sessions can go anywhere from an hour to 4 hours, 5 hours. And the lifting sessions, I like to keep around 45 minutes to an hour. If like right now, I'm not training for anything just yet. So I'm prioritizing more lifting, just keeping that aerobic base by dialing in like 20 to 30 miles per week, or going on like one long run in the weekend, and I'm lifting 5 to 6 days. And I've also been including cold plunging into my routine, which I think is, it's not a workout, but like the going into it, like I have to mentally prepare myself, just like I mentally prepare myself for a gym session and a run. So that has been great to add into my routine, and something new and something challenging as well.
I have to come on the record here before we talk more about your running and just say that I was the freak taking cold showers before it was cool. Before cold plunge was a thing, rewind 5, 6 years. I was the kid taking cold showers every day, writing about it on the internet, and people just thought I was nuts, and people still do, and I am. But now the cold plunge has become really popular, and I'd be curious to hear your take on it from a benefit standpoint. So obviously you're doing a hard thing, and there's a lot of value in doing something uncomfortable on purpose and enduring that. But outside of that, I mean, what are some of the benefits you've noticed from the cold plunges?
Um, so I've definitely noticed just like recovery based, like at first, when you first start doing it, since I'm doing it daily, I think I'm getting more of, um, it's easier to notice the benefits because I'm just tracking it day by day. And then when I go back and look like, oh, 3 weeks ago, I'm like, oh, wow, compared to this day 3 weeks ago, I feel way better. And the training volume is alike. So I can definitely tell like recovery wise. And of course, it's like it's not a lot. Like if my sleep is on point, my diet is on point, and I'm hitting that plunge is just like the sprinkles on top of the ice cream that's really helping with the recovery. So and I always like to track back, like, oh, I'm feeling like crap today. Why am I feeling like crap? And if it's like, oh, I didn't sleep that much last night, well, that's probably going to be why. And like the plunge might help, but you're not going to feel it because you're still tired from not sleeping. But other than that, I've also noticed um, a, a lot of self-control and like breathing. So I actually talked to my coworker the other day about this. Like I'm really good at adapting. Like if something big happens in my life that's traumatic or some adversity, and it's like a big thing, I'm able to be like, that's all right. I have an optimistic view. But for instance, if I lose my keys and I can't find them, like it's like almost the end of my day. Like I'm like, what that? And like it always. So I noticed that the cold plunge, the breathing I have to do to let myself calm down, so I'm not sitting there shivering, has also helped within my lifestyle. That if a little thing situation, I just take some of those deep breaths, and it's just the daily of doing the deep breaths in the cold situation that's transitioned into my lifestyle, and little things like if I lose my keys, for instance, and I just take a few deep breaths and I'm able to compose myself. And I definitely think that's because I've been doing the cold plunge daily.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for exposing yourself to a certain stressor, and that stressor and that exposure having carryover to other things. And I am the same way. I can deal with big change. I can get thrown off course and be okay with it. And sometimes it's the little things that throw me for a loop. And speaking of little things, my puppy right now is the one thing that's testing my patience more than most other things in life. And it's, we were talking before we hit record about how you didn't sleep great last night. I didn't sleep great last night. And sometimes those unexpected little things in life just, yeah, they get us at times that are inconvenient, and it throws a loop in things, but we have to adjust and adapt. And so we're here, and I'm going to ask you the first big question, Dan. What's the hardest thing that you've ever had to handle in life? So maybe a circumstance that you didn't necessarily get to choose for yourself.
That's an amazing question, dude. And I think I'd have to dial it back just because of everything that follows with it. But I think the hardest thing is my parents got a divorce when I was 10 years old. And like looking back through life and how a lot of my reactions were and how a lot of my emotions were, not until I was older and able to journal and kind of reflect. Um, that divorce had an effect on me because I was holding emotions in. I was kind of the odd one out. None of my friends' families were getting divorced, so I didn't really have a friend to like bond with in that. And then yeah, there's like little traumas. There was arguments between my parents, and I think that seeing those arguments, that's how I handled some situations. I would be argumentative or use anger rather than compose myself and then come with a normal conversation to talk it through. So that has definitely, if I were to say like one of the toughest things, because I had no control over that, especially at a young age. Maybe as someone that's older, they can sit down with their parents and have that conversation. I just like was not there. I was just like in the background and letting that happen and just like witnessing it. And the communication process throughout all that wasn't the best. So, Yeah, I mean, I'm just like reflecting that you asked that question. No one's ever asked me that question in a standpoint of like life, because sometimes you're like, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? And it's like, oh, I ran 100 miles. It's like that was really hard. But yeah, so that's an awesome question, and it's really actually made me reflect. And actually, after this podcast, I'm probably gonna think about that question some more.
I'm glad you think so. I'm also curious, some of the things that we don't get to choose in life can feel extra hard because we don't have that control over it. And looking back, do you see that as a net positive in your life, as a net negative, as a net neutral? Do you look back and think, wow, that made me the person I am today, and I'm really grateful for that? Or man, I wish that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think absolutely any negatives in life, if you can analyze it and you can reflect on it and look at it in an optimistic way, you can turn it around and make it seem like, wow, that was an amazing thing. A great example in my life where that did happen was I did Olympic weightlifting for 6 to 7 years. Like I even have this whole setup here is my Olympic weightlifting setup from when I was doing it for so long. Um, but I ended up dislocating my shoulder in a meet, and I had to get shoulder surgery. And right there, it could have been like I could have just been poopy pants and always pissed off about it, and just like thrown it out the door and be like, whatever, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not even going to lift anymore. But I saw it and I was like, you know what? This happens. Stuff happens. My arm didn't get taken off. I'm going to still be able to lift once it heals. I'm going to do it properly, and went about it like that. And then now I look at that because from that transitioned to me where I am now, and I'm into this running and all that. So it's like I went from that to this, and I completely that day that happened. That is like one of the best days of my life because it made me who I am right now. So yeah, I think you can really take advantage of not in the moment, but like if you reflect on the negative things that happen in your life, you can really make a positive outcome.
Yeah. Well, I think there's two things there. The first is that it really comes down to perspective and mindset and an intentional choice to see things a certain way because two different people can experience the same exact circumstance and have two different perspectives, and their lives can take two completely different trajectories from that point. And it's so powerful. It just is. And the second part is that I almost think of life sometimes as this puzzle where we don't have the box, right? We lost the box. We don't know what it's supposed to look like. And we're getting these pieces one at a time. And it can be super frustrating and discouraging when you get a piece and it just doesn't make sense. And you're like, I wanted a corner and I got a middle piece and I have no idea where this one goes. And I'm upset about it. I'm frustrated about it. Or you can choose the perspective of, oh, I got this piece and someday it's going to make sense. And right now I just have to control what I can and do my best. And I think someday we get to see as close to the finished product as possible. Some people maybe more than others, but we have to trust that it's going to come together at some point, or else what is the point if they don't all tie together, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's just like it's just understanding the journey of life. I think one of your questions you asked me like prior to the podcast was something like how I view life, but I remember answering in the terms of just like understanding pain. And once you understand pain, then everything else comes with it. And it's just processing that like life is hard no matter what, and it's put trying to make the best out of it. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's like it's gonna be freaking hard. You're gonna have emotions. You're not always gonna be positive. You're not always gonna be motivated, but you're living right now, and it's a blessing that you are. So like, let's make the best out of it, even through the hard times, and then let's analyze it to make it seem better than it was. Because you might be looking at it and dreading it, but then when you look back, you're like, wow, I made it so far from that moment and I didn't even realize, but now that I'm looking back, I do. So it's just understanding that pain. And even in life, like the end result, look at the end result. It's unknown and we die. So if you look at it like that, again, perspective, well, if we're going to die anyway, screw it. But most people don't think like that. And I would love to help people that do think like that, but most people don't think like that. So it's like, why are you even going to look at life in a negative way when negative things happen? When you're choosing to live, so let's live the best way you can. And you have all of this potential So let's pull that out of you.
Oh, all right. You're sparking a lot of things in my mind here. So I'm going to share a quote from episode 7 of this podcast with Hannah Huxley. I brought up this quote from Hunter S. Thompson, and he once said, "Life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, 'Wow, what a ride.'" And I love that image because you're right. Like, we don't get to take anything with us. And so why not give it everything we have while we're here? Why not wring the towel dry? Why not empty the bucket? Whatever analogy you want to use. I could not be more on board with that. And I guess a question to go back from that, pain is something that I agree. I think we need to understand, we need to be able to live with. How do you see suffering? Is suffering the same as pain to you? Is suffering different than pain? Suffering deeper than pain? What is the
Mm.
difference there, or not?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on. That's another great one, dude. It depends on, I guess, the type of suffering that you're going through. Like, there could be the physical pain, like say you fall off a mountain and you break your legs, and then you're stuck there. So you're in physical pain, and then you're stuck there knowing I might not get out of here alive, or I might not get out of here for a few hours before someone saves me. So now you're suffering in that pain. Um, but there's also a point of suffering, like in some mental pain, where you are living this day by day basis of just mundane and mediocre and just going through the motions, and like, sure, out to people you're greeting and you're being you and you're just being a human being because you're just surrounded by them all day, so you're just reacting to that. But in deep inside, you're suffering because you're not doing what you want to do with your life, and not viewing it the way that you viewed it before, maybe when you were a kid or whatnot. um so what was the original question about suffering? Like, how do I view it?
Yeah, is it different than pain? Is it the same as pain? Is it tied to pain?
Yeah, sometimes it can be the same as pain, and sometimes it could just be almost like an emotion that's just, or like a weight that's just hanging on you.
Mm.
So, and sometimes, like how I look at, there's times you can put yourself through suffering, and then that's the good suffering, because just like how I get in the cold plunge and I get in there and I push and stress my body in a eustress, not a
Mm.
distress, when I'm giving my body good stress so that it fights back, and you build resilience through that. Just like that, like that's why these ultra marathons are big, because I'm choosing to put myself, knowing I'm going to suffer, and then through that suffering, I'm figuring out all this stuff about me and the people around me, and that's good suffering. That's the suffering I think everyone should put themselves through. It doesn't have to be an ultra marathon. You know, for you, for instance, you choose to quit a 9 to 5, and technically, dude, you're waking up 3 a.m. and working till 9 p.m. sometimes, and you're not getting great sleep. Like, technically you're suffering because you're tired. Sometimes you're human, dude. You just want to relax and not be on a phone call, or just give your brain a rest. But the outcome of you pushing a little bit more and suffering a little bit more is gonna be all of this. So there's good suffering, there's pain suffering, like breaking your legs and sitting in it, and there's the mental suffering where you're just not making any moves and you're just staying put.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to tell people that I quit my 9 to 5 for a 5 to 9. And it's true, but
Yes.
it's meaningful to me. And it kind of leads me into this quote from Viktor Frankl. He said, in some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment that it finds a meaning. And I think it kind of comes back to that idea of perspective. And, you can be really struggling through something. It can be painful. It can be uncomfortable. But if you give it a meaning, whether or not you still call it suffering or not, if you give it a meaning, it's way more tolerable. It's way more bearable. And it's way more meaningful when it has a purpose. And I think that's so important to realize, because the things that you and I do, right? Like we get to do those things, right? Like how could you be miserable? And you can be miserable, but like how can you be miserable when you're running a 100-mile race or you're doing the entrepreneurship thing when you chose to be there, right? Because there are a lot of people who don't get to choose. And I just think it's an interesting thought exercise. Like I chose to be here, so how can I be suffering right now? And maybe suffering is a word that means different things to different people too. Yeah.
I agree.
But with that being said, I alluded to it. I'm going to ask you this next question. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but it might be different. You might surprise me. What's the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why have you done that thing?
Yeah, so I've ran 100 miles twice now. Um, I've attempted it 3 times. I've ran it twice. I mean, they were both hard. So the reason why I'm bringing up that I ran it twice, because there were two different 100-mile races. One was a last man standing race. So I didn't have to be 100 miles, but I ended up running 100 miles in that race. And it's the last guy that runs the most. I was like the top 3, but it doesn't matter because the guy that wins. There's no second or third technically. And then the other 100-mile race was just a loop, a 25-mile loop, and you have 32 hours to complete it. Both of them had a lot of climbing in them, but I guess my most recent 100-mile race was my hardest one because, yes, I chose to sign up and run this. And last year I did this race and I had to tap out at mile 81 because my feet were just so blistered up. So having to re-sign up and choose to do it again and knowing this time what I had to go through was totally just like just a killer, to know that I had to like, oh man, I got to grind through those stations again. But it all was laid up with like, well, now I have to set up my training so that it's so that I go there and I know I'm gonna do it, and it's just when am I gonna do it? When am I gonna?
So,
But yeah, that the most recent 100-mile race was definitely the hardest thing I've chose to do.
so you chose to do this thing, and I think it would be easy for us to focus the conversation on the race itself. And I do want to hear in detail about it. However, when you make the decision to do this thing, now there's all this training that happens. And I think it almost sometimes gets glossed over because people see what you did and they don't think too much about what you did to get to that point to be able to do that thing. So what did your training look like? How many miles were you running a week? Were there setbacks? Were there injuries? How did you work through those things? Tell us everything.
Yeah, so I ran the last man standing, and it was supposed to be like a prep. Like everything I did in 2022 was to prep me for the December 100 miler that I was coming for vengeance. So like that was my target goal, and everything was get me ready. So in April, I did a 50 miler. And then so like I build up for the 50 miler and then let my body taper down. And then throughout the summer, I built up for this last man standing. And the way I trained for that was similar to how I would train for a 100-mile race, but it was more about the time on my feet because it was about pacing that it's a 4.16-mile loop that you have to do on the top of every hour. So if I do it in 50 minutes and I get back, then I have 10 minutes to eat whatever I have to do. Top of the hour, you go back out for another loop until there's only one guy standing. So I trained in that format. But for this, then after that, so that was August. My race was in December. September was kind of like I'm crushed. Like I never ran 100 miles before. My legs were pretty dead. So I had to let my CNS, my central nervous system, and everything like build back up. So I slowly started building back up. And then October was like my big month where I started at like 50 miles and I ran a few 70-mile weeks. And again, building up with a little tape, with a little deload, and then building up again. And in the midst of that, I'm doing a lot of long runs and back-to-back long runs, sometimes triple back-to-back-to-back long runs, which has helped me in my training, but it's all based on what your body can handle and take. Because the way I trained for the race this year was way different than I did the year before because I bumped up the volume while trying to maintain strength with it. Because I truly believe in these long endurance races that muscle endurance and just having muscle on you in the long run is going to help you a big time. It's going to help you big time because your muscles totally die out. And when you're running, if you don't have enough strength and everything starts slouching, you start running with terrible form and things start getting injured, and then you might not finish the race. So it's important to train both, but prioritize the running. So a lot of back-to-back runs, and what that means is maybe Saturday I'm running 20 miles, and then I'm waking up Sunday running another 20 miles just to load up the legs and get the legs used to a lot of volume in a short amount of time without overdoing it, so that you're not too tired for the next week and you don't want to burn out or get injured. There's a thing I talk to a lot of my clients about, and it's the load versus capacity. So we have this box, and I wish I like had something like a PowerPoint to show you, but basically it's like a chart, and you have a line, and I can use this wall as the line where this is your capacity line. You already have things just waking up, just natural stress from waking up, things that you've been diagnosed with. Say you have Lyme's disease or something, like that's always with you. So that will always be stacked there. Then you have your home life and your work, and then your exercise. So if you have these things and say your workload is high, your home life is stressful, and you're adding exercise, you have to be careful that you're not going over that line, because once you go over that line is where those injuries and bad things happen. Now, if you're an athlete and you're training for performance, and especially an ultramarathoner runner, you're inevitably gonna run over that line, and it's knowing like what your body feels like over that and knowing not to push it too much so you don't get injured. So it's like I had to constantly make sure my load versus capacity wasn't too high so that I wasn't getting injured. But what happened was I loaded it too fast, and I started having an IT band issue. And that was just something where I was testing if I could just maintain strength training and maybe back off a tiny bit, that I wouldn't have to totally back all the way off and stop running. And like I was religious on just like rolling out and just trying all these things that like not necessarily that you should be doing to fix it, because it was only a temporary fix. But I was doing all those things because I was just like, I got to get this training in, and I got to go to this race, and I got to finish it. Like I can't let this like stop me. Luckily, I was far enough out where it did heal, and I was able to get my training block through. Was it the smartest thing? Maybe not, but it was a little adversity I had to go through, and I got through that. And it was an amazing training block. And you're not only training running volume and in the gym working on strength, but you're also you have to be used to running tired. So maybe some mornings I'm waking up extra early, so I'm running a little in the dark with my headlamp. You have to know what your body can eat. And like everyone is different. I'm super weird. I can run 60 miles and chug a chocolate milk, eat a yogurt, and eat a bowl of mashed potatoes and not have one stomach issue. Disgusting. But but I know that works for my stomach. So in training, I'm kind of eating that way. Not always that way, but I'm testing the foods that are gonna work for me. And during the race, like that was the biggest thing for me that kept me going, was that I was able to eat from mile 1 to mile 100. And that's so important. And a lot of times, like I think the biggest thing for ultramarathoners, even elite ultramarathoners, is that their gut kicks out. So if you could figure out how to work your gut in training, then you're going to be okay on race day. So it's a lot of factors. It's prioritizing. It's a lot of time too. So like my day was like waking up, training clients, working on the business, going for my runs, getting my lift session in, working on the business, training clients, going to bed so I can get enough hours and do it again the next day. So it probably looked a little like Joe Rinaldi's schedule.
Maybe a little bit more, to be honest. But I think you bring up a lot of good points there. And one of the big takeaways is that it's an art and a science, and there's a lot of feel that goes into something like that, and everybody's different, and you need to be really in tune with your body. You need to be checking in, and it's a long process even just to get to the start line. And so you get to the start line and you're there, you've got a support crew with you, I would love for you to just briefly touch on how you formed your support crew, because I know one of your support crew, and I know it wasn't the most conventional way to meet someone who ended up supporting you for a race like that.
Yeah. So last year I had a good friend of mine, Kevin Hogler. He's another ultra runner, an ultra runner with the MS too. He has a great story if you ever want to look into him. And so I had Kevin, my sister, my younger sister, my ex-girlfriend, and that was it. It was them three. So Kevin already told me, like, dude, I can't make it for this year. Me and my girlfriend broke up, so I knew she was out, and it was just me and my sister. And like at that point, I had a couple friends in mind, but I'm like, I'm not gonna make them go through this. Like they want nothing to do with this. Um, so the first one I met was Drummett, and he's lives in Monroe as well. He's just a marathon runner, and he's very supportive in the ultra run marathon community. But he's never run an ultra. He just likes to crew people. So we have a mutual friend who's also an ultra marathoner, and he like DM'd me on Instagram, and that's how we connected. So through Instagram DMs, meanwhile, we live in the same town. So we met up, we went on a few runs, we talked about it. So now it was me, my sister, and my friend Drummett. And then I started implementing the Banya, which is a sauna house where it has a sauna and a cold plunge. So I signed up there to just add to my training. That was another thing on my schedule. And this is where I met Vin Kennedy, our mutual friend. Um, and he's another ultra marathoner, has the same mindset as us, and it was like amazing to connect with him. And right away, like when I told him I'm running 100 miles and I'm looking to build a crew, he was like, I'm in. So like we met each other half naked in the sauna, and we talked about running 100 miles or him pacing me for 100 miles. And then the last one, another friend from the Banya who introduced me to the Banya, he surprised me with, yo, dude, I'm going to actually end up coming and help pace you as well. So Vin and Greg, my other friend Greg, they came down too. So it was Drummett, my sister Liz, my friend Greg, and my other friend Vin. Vin and Greg helped pace me. Liz and Drummett were other two vital members because they got everything else prepared for me when the other ones were out there pacing with me. There was only pacing one at a time, but like when one wasn't pacing, they were probably just resting. So like Liz and Drummett were like the key to feeding me and doing all the other things when they couldn't. So yeah, like it was up in the air until August, and then I met all of them and it all formed. And just even that happening, I had a good feeling that something great was going to come out of
Mm.
this.
So, I mean, for people who are unfamiliar with ultra running, right, it's a team effort. You're the one running, but it's a team effort. And again, that behind the scenes work, that behind the scenes camaraderie, you don't always get to hear about. So that's cool. Appreciate you sharing. Uh, let's go through the race. And obviously, 100 miles is a long time. So if we can maybe pinpoint a few highlights or lowlights for you throughout that race, I'd love to hear about some of those.
Yeah. So um, the start was great. I would say the first 50K, well, the first marathon, which is one loop, um, I was lit up. I was so pumped to be out there, and I was just eating food and having great conversation when I was out there, and just everything was good vibes. And I'd come back to my crew and I'd see them and be so pumped up. So the first loop was amazing. Second loop went really well as well. And after the second loop, I was allowed to bring my pacers on with me because at the 50-mile marker, you're allowed to pace. So the nighttime came. I finished my second loop. Vin hopped in with me, and I think I was still good from 50. We'll start saying about around 65. That's when a lot of like mental lows started kicking in. So even though Van and Greg, they were doing a great job of being there with me, even though they were going through their own little adversities, like Greg rolled his ankle. Vin rolled his ankle. Greg actually had a fever at one point. Like he wasn't feeling good. Like, but they weren't telling me. They were so great that like they knew I was already suffering. So they were like, I'm not even going to let them know. I'm just going to push. Like, how am I supposed to tell a guy at mile 60 that I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
good? It's like, so I started getting the mental lows. And what the mental lows is like I was talking about earlier in the podcast of just this voice comes in your head and it's like, it's like pointing out all the little pains and aches in your body and saying that you don't have to do it, basically. And it's the constant like, shut up, shut up, shut up. And even like your friend in your ear, like, you got this. Like, everyone in the world could be cheering you on, but that voice is way louder, especially when you're very vulnerable at nighttime at mile 16. It's a little cold out and you're hurting, man. So that was where my mental kicked in. My body started kicking in around mile 85. My legs just, it's 20,000 feet overall of climbing. So my legs were just like, dude, we're going to tap out soon. And I felt them just slowly going. And mile 93 to mile 100, the last 7 miles, I think took me 2.5 to like 3 hours to finish, where, that would take me maybe an hour in the mountains. It took me a while because I was just crawling through. And that was just like a suffer fest, dude. But like, I would tell myself, like, this is what you signed up for, like right here. And at that point, I knew I was going to finish, and I actually finished top 5. So I knew I was going to finish top 5. And so, although it was a crappy point, like, I knew it was over and I was going to get through it. And like we were saying before, like, you're going to get through the suffering. And if you have the idea that there's something good going to come out of it, then it's going to make it so much easier to push through. So yeah, briefly, like, I was sick, like, in a good way. Like, I was like in amazing shape mile 1 through 80. And then my body, or 85, and then my body just started shutting down. And the reason I think I was able to last so long was because I was able to eat and all the training I put into it. And of course, like, having one of the best crews out there. So yeah, dude, it was an amazing experience. And to go out there and have some vengeance to this race, like what BPN's doing right now, it's like what I did last year. Like, I proved myself right. I told myself I was going to do this, and I went and I did it. And like, doing that with yourself, it unlocks a new level. Like, you just broke down a new wall, and it's like, all right, I'm in this new room. Let's fill it up with paint, let's do it. And then break down the next wall. So like, you just unlock this new era, and I'm like, dude, I freaking finished this race. It was on my mind for a whole year, and I did it. And I made a plan, and I executed that plan, and it went well, and there wasn't too much adversity with it. So it was an amazing race. And it's always great to just like go back through it in my mind. It's so vivid, and especially those night hours. It's a lot of night. It's 14 hours of night because it's like December 11th. So it's around the longest days of the year. So great race, dude. Took 4th place. Still like coming back from it right now. And I definitely have another 100-miler this year coming up. Not signed up yet, but I have a few on the radar. So there will always probably be 100-mile races unless I decide to push past 100 and try those crazy 200s.
I have no doubt that you are going to stay true to that word. And I think that confidence is this thing that I think people, for the most part, believe that you have or you don't have, that you are somehow born with confidence or you're not born with confidence. Confidence is built, and it's built through our decisions, it's built through our actions. And it really comes down to, can you do what you said you were going to do? Like, that is confidence, right? Because if you have a track record of showing up and doing the things you said you're going to do, then you can put your mind to anything and you can go do it. And that's confidence. And I think that's so cool that you went out and did that. But it also sounds like you had a 100-mile attempt that didn't go the distance. What was that like for your confidence?
It's funny because you're saying that, and it's like, when I signed up for the 100, it was in my head, I was like, I can do 100 miles. But like, deep down, I was like, dude, 100 miles. Like, I don't even know what it's like running at night. So there was a lot of fears like going into that one. But and then even when I got there, the race director was basically like, yeah, dude, like, elites come out here and they don't finish this race. Last year we only had 4 finishers out of 50. Like, you're not going to finish this race. He basically he's like, oh, you're from New Jersey. Like, there's no way you're finishing this race. And I ended up like making it, like, I was ready to run my feet off, but the pain was like so much, and I was going so slow. And like I said, there's a cutoff time, 32 hours. So I was going to a point where I wouldn't make the cutoff time. So that's why I chose to stop there. And it was like I had confidence that I signed up for that race knowing deep down that like that was a ballsy move. And I made it 80 miles. And like even the race director looked at me like, dude, I thought like you were going to finish at that point. Like you didn't check out at mile 50 and you kept pushing with those blisters. Like you're crazy. So like it gave me a confidence booster to be like, hell yeah, you know what? Now I'm going to sign up for this race. I'm going to train the right way. I know what it's all about. And I really dove deep into the ultra world. So let's go. And it lit a fire. It really did. So another thing, it's like, dude, that was the best thing that could have happened to me. Going there and failing rather than going there and finishing with like 31 minutes and 59 of 31 hours and 59 minutes, going, reevaluating, reassessing, and then going back and finishing top 5.
Man, there's so much good stuff there. And you can feel the passion that you have for this in the conversation, which I love. I just think it's a great lesson. I mean, really to me, failure is this weird word where most people think it means one thing, but I think ultimate failure and really the only failure is giving up on something that's meaningful to you. And everything else is just, it's a learning experience. It's an opportunity to grow. It's a place to get stronger and better. And we call it failure because it means you didn't get to what you were set out to do. But it's really not. Like ultimate failure, the only real failure is when you stop trying. And I think that's the truth.
100%, dude.
Uh,
You just can't give up.
yeah, can't give up, man. Can't give up. And so, with that being said, this is the Project Endure podcast. Endurance to a lot of people, and I would assume yourself, means not giving up. But if I were to just wipe the slate clean and say, Dan, what does the word endurance mean to you? What would you say?
Besides not giving up, endurance is just being able to withstand everything in life that's thrown at you, pain, joy, laughter and crying, whatever it is, and being able to absorb that and then making something a little better from it, and keep evolving through time as you're going forward. Because like endurance is just, you're always going to be going forward in life because you're aging, right? So it's like being able to withstand going forward and aging the way that you choose to age. Because there's people that are 50 years old and they could be like crumbled because they just didn't pick the best lifestyle because they chose easy habits or poor habits through life. But the people that are 50 years old in great shape and great health, and more so great health up here, and having a lot of wisdom and learning through failures and the test of life, those people have like the ultimate endurance because everything was thrown at them, just like you and me and everyone in the world. Like in the world, life is going to constantly throw things at you, and it's being able to push your way through that and not dodge it, but actually like face it and then push your way through that wall. And then you're creating this like ultimate like person out of yourself. Like when you're 50 years old and you look back at life through those 50 years and you absorb all that, even if you never did it before, but then you start to reflect, you're instantly hit with so much wisdom because you're like, wow, I can't imagine. Because 50 years for me is 20 years from now. I can't imagine. In the past 30 years, I can look back and absorb so much. I can't imagine what another 20 does. You feel like you could be a superhero by then. So it's really just being able to withstand everything to become that superhero.
Ooh,
That's true endurance.
I like that a lot. I mean, it's to me, it also means riding the waves. It means, riding the highs, riding the lows, and knowing that both of them pass. And what you were saying too is like you can live life unintentionally, and life will push you and pull you in whatever direction everybody around you is going and moving. Or you can choose to be intentional and you can choose your path. And I almost thought for a second, and I'm not sure if this is still forming in my mind, so bear with me, but we could either choose pleasure or we could choose potential. We could choose what's easiest or we could choose what's best. And it comes back to something that Tony Reyes said on episode 4 of this podcast. Comfort is a slow death. And I believe that.
Dude, me too. I have a shirt that says that. Comfort is one of my favorite shirts. It's like black, but it's faded because I've worn it so many times. But yeah, dude, 100%. If you're just sitting in comfort, well, what I was saying before, it's like comfort can be super mundane. Like comfort to me is, I'm sitting watching Netflix, I'm chilling, I'm relaxed, I'm eating whatever I want, like some Skittles with ice cream and whatever it is. And that's super comfortable. But over time, what is that? Your brain starts to rot because you're not actually moving like life can be compared to the ocean. Like you should be moving and alive, and it's so constantly chaotic, but at other times it's very stable. And if you can balance that chaos and stability, you're on the right path. But it's getting out of the comfort zone sometimes to do that. And I love how you said, what did you say? You can choose to go easy or you can choose to
Yeah.
go the best, and
Yeah.
not
Pleasure,
choose to go.
or potential, easy or best, right?
Yeah, and it's like easy and best. Best, it's not easy and hard because sometimes best could be easy or sometimes best could be hard, but it's always going for the
Mm.
best and knowing that it sometimes could be easy and sometimes could be hard.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I, upon reflecting just now, know a lot of people who are suffering because they've chosen comfort. Right? Like,
Mm,
I think a lot of people are suffering because they choose comfort. Um, yeah, just a thought. Um,
same. And you have to, I don't even want to use the word balance, but it's like you have to know where it gets a little crazy to choose too much discomfort because then it could go like I know people that sign up for 100 marathon 100-mile marathon ultra marathons after they run one because they're like, whoa, I want that again. It's like, well, dude, you gotta like spread that out because now you're just searching for that dopamine, that finish line
mm,
dopamine. It's like you got to earn that dopamine. You also want to live, like you want to do it for the long run and earn that dopamine over and over for the next 50 years. So it's like, don't go too crazy about it. Don't cold plunge for 30 minutes if you've only cold plunged for 5 minutes the week prior. Like don't get too sucked into that dopamine fix either. Both sides, right? Because there's the dopamine from the comfort and there's the dopamine from like too much discomfort, too much cortisol. Um, so finding that balance of like, okay, I know when to be comfortable and not blame myself for being comfortable because I know I'm sure you've struggled from that too, right? Like I'm not working or I'm not doing something hard. It's like we've drilled that, we've calloused our brains so much that like if we do something on the outside of that, it's like, wait, should I be doing this right now? Man, I should be running or something. Like so it's knowing and being aware of when to be comfortable and when to do hard things.
so well said. And I'll also say that I think a lot of life is about contrast. And it's been said that you can't have the bitter without the sweet. You can't have the sweet without the bitter, but you can't have the easy without the hard. And you can't have the hard without the easy. And I think a lot of life is being able to bounce back and forth between extremes, between the highs and the lows, between the easy and the hard, between the comfortable and the uncomfortable. Because without the other, the other end wouldn't be as meaningful. If you are always cold, then what's the point of doing a cold plunge? Because you're not exposing yourself to a different stress, right? It has to be different. And you look at, the human body, because I'm a geek, so we'll go there for a second. Heart rate variability, right? Like you want your heart rate to be able to, get up there and then come back down. You want to be able to adapt to different circumstances and different states of being. And we can't adapt to hard things if we don't know what easy is, and we can't enjoy easy if we don't know what hard is.
Dude, that is gold right there. That is great stuff. I'm gonna have to after this podcast because there's so many things said and like as you're saying them, my brain's going like
Yeah,
I'm like losing
I
it.
have trouble sleeping after these sometimes. But but all right, so here we go. We're gonna land this plane. This podcast is being listened to by people all over the country, all over the world, going through different things. Some people are choosing hard things, some people are in a season where they are taking their foot off the gas, some people are really suffering, and some people are really enjoying everything about life right now. But no matter who's listening and where they are, we're all going to experience hard things in life because that's part of life. If you had the chance now, Dan, to speak directly to those people listening who are going through something really hard and they're just not sure what to do or where to turn, what would you say to those people?
I think the best thing to say is to really be present in this moment and really reflect, not even reflect just yet, but know there's going to be a time of reflection, and that your presence in the moment is going to absorb everything so that later on you can reflect. And from that reflection, you will learn so many lessons so that this hard time may never happen again. And yeah, it's really just being present and facing the things that you hate to face. And I've learned that just through life. Like, I've been someone to kind of like look away or avoid it and be a little bit of an avoidant just to not deal with it. But when I actually faced it, it hurt. It's painful in that moment, but facing it like you fight through it so much better, and you really get to feel it. And when you feel emotions all the way fully, that only helps you grow and evolve into more of like a human. The thing with us now, we're so far from who we actually are as humans that sometimes we like touch that and like, and oh man, my anxiety's gone, or oh man, I feel so much better. So like we say, and people probably go on and they hear do hard things, but we're saying that because we genuinely mean, from our experience, doing those hard things taught us the lessons to be able to do the hard things all the time and choose to do the hard things, and then make a community of people that also want to do those hard things together so that we can suffer together and evolve together. There was I don't know the quote because you're just like a quote genius, but maybe you even know this quote, but there was something said that like men bond better together that go through war than men who see each other every day at work or something like that. Because like going through those hard times together, you go through all the emotions, the roller coaster ride of emotions, and you can really learn to appreciate who you are as a human, rather than just like, hey Frank, hey Rick, hey Lisa, all right, see you later. You know, it's just very surface, but actually digging deep and finding out what people are made of, and sometimes having to pull someone through or having them pull you through really shows you who you are. So that's another little thing of advice, you know, like face your fears and face the moment and be present, but also like express what you're going through and talk to someone. And if you could talk to someone that can relate to you, that's even easier. If not, talk to someone that you know is ready to hear you, because it's hard to just like dump it all onto someone and they're not absorbing it and they're not going to give you the best advice. So like look for someone who's open to hearing you, ask them if they're open to hearing you. And I'm sure those two things will help you feel a lot better. And the last thing is just writing out your feelings and getting it out of you, because sometimes it's so stuck in you that you don't realize that all you have to do is just release it. And it doesn't have to be anyone. You could talk to a wall and release it. And it's literally something I've done before. Like like I said, I've learned through life. And I think it's from all the way going back to when my parents got a divorce, is that like, I was just avoidant. So like my parents would fight and I would just like hide in my room, you know, cause I was avoidant, and that built in relationships and friendships I've had in life that I was very avoidant. Now I know, oh, it's because I'm not expressing myself. And once I did express myself, I was so relieved, and it really helped me out. So face it, express yourself, talk to someone that's ready to hear, and then when it's time, you'll be able to reflect and look back and realize how much of a positive thing that rough time was.
Ooh, thank you for that, man. That's powerful stuff, and it jogged my thought process. And the last episode I recorded, so the episode before this with a guest, Logan Locke, the title is "You Can't Hide," and we got on this kind of thought idea of you can run but you can't hide, right? I think we've all heard that, and it's true. Like, you can't hide, right? If you ever want to overcome something, if you ever want to deal with something, you have to face it. You can't hide. I think that's one. And then two, I've actually been waiting to share this quote for a while now, and it's just never felt right. So you, I think, set the stage well for this. This is from Veronica Tugaleva. I probably butchered that, but I don't think she's alive. I don't think she's alive anymore, so she doesn't mind. She said, to know yourself, you must sacrifice the illusion that you already do. And I think one of the beautiful things, right? I know, mind blown, right? One of the beautiful things about doing hard things is that you you enter this new place where you realize you really didn't know who you were, and you get to explore more of who you really are. And I think too often people don't give themselves the credit that they can do hard things, and they think they know who they are, and they think they know they can't do things. But when they actually go out and they push, they realize that they actually don't know themselves, and there's a whole lot of strength beneath the surface. So thank you for allowing me to share that quote, because I've been waiting for 80 episodes at this point.
Dude, that's such a good one. And that reminds me, again, I'm not a quote guy, like remembering the quotes, but I see them and it like strikes me and it hits me and I know some of it. But it was like, the real you comes out when you sit in silence. And it's like putting yourself, like if you really think of that, like if you have to sit in silence like monks do, you're forced, no phone, nothing. You're forced to sit with yourself and start questioning yourself. And like, I can't imagine how many times you'd go crazy before you'd be calm and be like, wait, all right, let me have a real conversation. And I think like that's what the training and I genuinely love training for an ultra marathon rather than running the actual ultra marathon, because that's where I find out a lot of my growth. The days where I don't want to go out there, but then I'm out there without my headphones in the silence and I'm like listening to my breath, and my breath becomes a conversation, and the conversation starts to spark creativity. And then all of a sudden I'm like digging deeper, or I'm figuring out a problem that I had within myself. So again, yeah, being in silence sometimes can be the best thing for yourself. And if you add a little something that's going to give you endorphins with that, you can, it's like the ultimate way to really figure out who you are.
Yeah, it's a great recipe. So Dan, if people want to have a conversation with you, if they want to reach out and connect or follow along with what you have going on next for those next 100 miles, or they just want to learn more about you, where's the best place for people to do that?
I'm very active on Instagram, so you can check out my Instagram. It's at Marchese Fitness. It's Marchese Fitness. I also have a YouTube channel, Dan Lifts and Runs. And on there, obviously, I'm doing some lifting and running, but I do have a lot of videos where I talk about my training going into a 50 miler, 100 miler, the last man standing race. That seems to get like the best insight. So I took a note on that. Like I got to make more videos like this, but yeah, so I go on videos like that where I'm talking about my training, and then also some vlogging and my gym sessions and whatnot. Those are my two main sources. I mess around with TikTok. It's the same as Instagram, Marchese at Marchese Fitness. But yeah, reach out to me. You know, we can connect if you feel we have similar mindsets. I love doing that on Instagram. Always reaching out to people, sliding in their DMs just to connect. And you know, it goes to show that like, hey man, there's other people like you and me out there, and the more we can get us all going together, the better the world's going to be, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm excited for you to get down to Philadelphia and meet some people who are really special to me, and even some previous podcast guests who you just share so much in common with. And that's one of the things about this podcast that I love. You know, everybody's got a different story, yet there are so many similarities. And it's really cool to hear the same themes come up over and over and over and over again from different people through different circumstances. And it's just special to be surrounded with people like yourself. So I appreciate you, Dan.
Dude, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for that.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. And one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.